Hello and welcome back to Dukascopy TV. Positive UK data out today has led many to believe the country is out of its recession. I'm joined on the line by Alessio Restani, Forex Trader at Leading Forex, to take an in-depth look at the country's economy. Alessio, thank you for joining me. The UK economy grew 1% in the third quarter. Does this mean the UK is out of its recession?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, Jennifer. Certainly the news came out today that I guess it wasn't surprise news that GDP has grown 1% last quarter. But the fact is, I don't think it's anything to get excited about. Economic numbers and figures are lagging indicators. Most traders know this. It doesn't really matter what politicians and economists really say. For one thing, politicians want to score political points for their opponents. And I don't really think, I'm not convinced personally we're out of recession yet. Even if the economy has grown by 1%, what does that really mean? I mean, if it means we're back to where we were a year ago, I think there's a major chasm between what the economists are telling us and what the ordinary consumer in the UK feels. And, you know, for the ordinary, as I mentioned before in the last interview I did with you, the ordinary guy in the street here in the UK, you know, they still feel in recession. The sentiment, the consumers and the businesses, the ones that I've been speaking to, the ones that I deal with, they feel we're still in a recession. And one quarter growth, Jennifer, really does not make a trend. I mean, what we need to see is a consistent trend. We need to see consistency.
Last week we spoke about retail sales and discussed how on the surface these figures seem to be positive, but in reality it's a very different story. Would you say the result today suggests sales may be improving?
Yes, and this goes to another point people make is about the Olympic sales, and that kind of stuff, is that boosting growth. Personally, I just want to cover that point, which a lot of people are making, that the Olympics has boosted this growth, and I think I'm very skeptical about that. Certainly, I would be worried if people out there are getting excited that the Olympics has helped the UK in some way, because if that's the case, that means that it's a one-off. You know, it's one thing that happened over the summer period. We had some more sales, we had more growth. But if that's the case, that goes against consistency. We need to see something in a long-term strategy for growth. And I'm very skeptical that even the Olympics did help the UK. The reason is that I've got friends who work in retail. I have a friend of mine who works in Selfridges. She works in a department store in Selfridges. She's worked there for many years. And she sees clients coming through, people coming through, and she's telling me that business has actually been quite quiet over the Olympic period. And for folks who don't know, Selfridges is in the center of London. I mean, this is Oxford Street, one of the busiest shopping stores in the UK. So to me, I mean, to my friends and to my people who work in the retail sector, they don't see that kind of growth. They don't see that particular increase in sales. The sentiment, as far as they're concerned, is still pretty much what we were a year ago. And if you look at the other markets, like the stock market, you can see the same thing happening over there. Apple and Google share prices are down. You know, they have suffered greatly over the last few weeks. And so, you know, I don't see any evidence either in the consumer basis or in the stock market that we're out of recession.
You say retail sales have been negative, but today we saw soaring profits from online retailers such as the female clothing site ASOS. Would you say this success is down to international trade?
That's a good point, actually, Jennifer. Yeah, I mean, certainly online websites like Amazon do see improvement, especially during the Christmas period as well. People doing probably more shopping online, but it doesn't, of course, translate to other kind of retail when it comes to the offline sort of retail. And that's a very important point you make there, yeah.
We did previously see a high rate of inflation in the UK. Would you say this is affecting income growth?
Well, certainly inflation was higher back in August. July period, we're about 2.5%. Now we're down in September, we're about 2.15%. It has reduced somewhat. But I think, Jennifer, I don't think it's so much to do with inflation. Certainly it has something to do with it. You're absolutely right. But I think it's the fact that consumers are just tightening their belt. Businesses are not hiring still. Banks are still not lending to businesses. And until the banks start lending, we won't see any money coming to invest. So banks have to, start lending to businesses. Otherwise, we won't see any growth. And the other thing is that there seems to be a kind of anti-business climate in Britain. Now, I have to say, firstly, I don't have any political biases. I don't have any political preferences at all. But there is nonetheless an anti-business climate or culture maybe in Britain. And that's due to the regulations are far too anti-business. As an example, the strict employment laws and high taxes for businesses. So I think, that kind of stuff, it stifles economic growth. The government hasn't done anything to improve those things. And until they do, we won't see any major changes, inflation or no inflation.
Lastly, looking ahead, do you think that the UK will continue to see growth in the short and long term?
Personally, Jennifer, what we need to see is long-term growth and a long-term strategy, not just a blip in one quarter. Again, yes, positive news came out today, some elements of growth, but I personally, the way I see it is this. The central banks, not just the UK, but all central banks in Europe and in America, their goal and their intention is to continue what they've always done, which is to try to fix this economy, which nobody can fix, but the only way they know to fix it is to throw money at the problem, which means essentially quantitative easing, QE. So money printing, really, just in simple terms. So what they're planning to do is just print the heck out of the economy, put it in simple terms, and inflate their way out of this recession. Is it going to work? Is all this money printing, all this quantitative easing, is it going to work? I very much doubt it. We've had two previous examples of QEs in the past. They haven't stimulated much growth. We haven't seen any evidence of that. Is this one going to work? I doubt that. I think there's a difference between flooding the banks with money and then actually lending it out. As I've been saying, the banks are not lending. They've been starting to lend to, for mortgages and stuff like that, but I don't see any lending to businesses. So again, there's a difference between flooding the banks with money and then actually lending it out. So given the fact that we haven't seen much growth from the last QEs, I don't see we're going to see much growth from these economic measures either. 1 quarter growth is not significant. As I said, 1 month or 1 quarter is not a trend. And by the way, let's not forget this. Most economists have agreed that it will take at least another 5 years, maybe more than that, before the economy goes into pre-recession periods. So a very long period of time to wait, 5 years even. And I think even 5 years is pretty much optimistic.
Thank you, Alessio, for giving us your insights today. Please feel free to take part in any of our live Dukes of Copy webinars. Take care.